Welcome to Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. Today we're bringing you fresh hope about what to expect in our golden years. And guess what? Getting old does not have to mean our bodies and our minds break down. Dr. Stephen Gundry is one of the world's leading experts on aging well. His book is called The Longevity Paradox: How to Die Young at a Ripe Old Age. And Dr. Gundry, what a pleasure to have you with us. I love the title, How to Die Young at a Ripe Old Age. What does that mean?
Well, you know, most of us want to get old, but when we start looking down the line and we see, operations in our future, hip replacements, knee replacements, heart surgery, and maybe ending up in a nursing home, not remembering our name, that doesn't look very good. So the paradox of longevity is we want to be young well into ripe old age. And the good news is you can actually achieve that at any age.
So a lot of people don't even think that's possible. They have to live in a single-story home, and they're not going to have very much mobility or very much memory. And you say none of that has to be the case.
No, that's actually, we're beginning to be taught that that's going to happen to us. But if we look at super old people who live well into their early hundreds and even up to 120, we know, in fact, that getting old doesn't have to mean debility, doesn't have to mean not having your mind, doesn't have to mean cancer and heart surgery. And there's real good evidence on how to accomplish getting old to a ripe old age. And
this is so exciting.
Yeah.
I love it. And you know, there are these areas in the world called blue zones where there are high concentrations of people who live over 100. And you actually lived in the only blue zone in the United States, Loma Linda, California. What do all these populations have in common?
Well, it's been a subject of great debate, and I'm actually the only nutritionist who has actually spent most of his career living and practicing in a blue zone, Loma Linda, California. And you hear a lot from people who write about the blue zone that the things that the blue zone people have in common is they eat whole grains and they eat beans. And in fact, that's actually not the truth. What unites all these blue zones is that they actually eat very little animal protein. And that's the thing that separates all these blue zones. It's not the beans, it's not the grains. In fact, there's multiple blue zones that don't eat beans and grains, and yet they have longevity. What's been found at Loma Linda by Dr. Gary Frazier, one of my colleagues, is that these long-lived Adventists, the longest living of the long-lived Adventists, are actually vegans. And that as more animal protein is slowly added into their diet, being it eggs or cheese even, that their longevity and their health span actually begins to go down.
What I love about this book, and it is fantastic, is all the recipes in here, because a lot of people say, what can you eat if you're not eating animal? And you have so many great examples. For example, this wonderful breakfast, you call this grits, but it's actually millet. And a lot of people have never even heard of millet.
Well, most people would actually recognize millet. It's called birdseed. But millet is a fantastic grain that doesn't have what's a protein that are called lectins, which actually destroy our gut barrier. And I grew up in Atlanta and went to school, medical school at Georgia, and I loved grits, only to find out that corn grits are actually not prepared the way they traditionally were. Corn was initially treated with lye and became hominy, and then it was ground, but we don't do that anymore. So I like to preserve the flavors that we're used to, but have flavors that actually enhance us rather than kill us. Grains actually are one of the biggest causes of arthritis that's known. So to get grains that have lectins, like wheat or corn, out of our diet actually will reverse arthritis. So you can make grits using millet, and you can't tell the difference. It's going to have the same mouthfeel, it's going to have the same flavor. And then what I like to do is combine it with scrambled eggs that are actually made from omega-3 eggs that you can get in any grocery store now, or pastured eggs, chickens that were actually allowed to go outside and eat bugs, which is what they were supposed to do. But there's a trick in here. Now, these are spicy, but they have mushrooms in it. And you're going, mushrooms for breakfast. It turns out mushrooms have a compound that are called polyamines, and there won't be a test.
Good.
So polyamines have been shown to actually improve longevity dramatically the more polyamines you eat, and mushrooms are a great source of polyamines. What's also really cool is a new study out of Singapore showed that people who eat 2 cups of mushrooms per week, now that's actually not a lot, particularly you can cook 2 cups of mushroom cooked is actually about what you see right here, have a 90% reduction in Alzheimer's compared to people who don't eat 2 cups of mushrooms a week. So think about this. If I had a drug that said, Lori, if you take this drug once a week and you will have a 90% chance of not having Alzheimer's, I mean, how much would you pay for that drug? And all you got to do is go buy some crimini or button mushrooms at the store, you know, a little package that costs you $2. That's how much you pay for that drug.
Love it. So this is the ideal breakfast. What about lunch?
Oh, lunch. So one of the things I try to do is convince people that if you're going to eat beans or legumes, you need to actually detoxify them. And traditional cultures have actually always figured out how to get lectins, these nasty little plant compounds, out of beans and legumes. So the best of the legume family are lentils. Now, 2 reasons for that. Lentils have the most protein of any of the bean family, and they're actually very quick cooking, and they actually have the less lectins in them. You can soak beans, and traditionally people would soak beans or lentils for days, and they would actually change the water every few hours, pour it out, because the lectins will come out and it'll be safer for you. But you don't have to do that anymore. One of the things I love is there's a company I have no relationship with called Eden. And Eden not only soaks all of their bean products, but it's the only company that actually pressure cooks their beans in a non-BPA can. People have heard about BPA. It's one of the nasty little toxins that lie in our cookware and everything. So this is a non-BPA can, and it has pressure cooked lentils. So it's in most stores now. Most health food stores have it. So you can just take these, and this is a lentil burger with mushrooms. And so you can fry this up, or you can make meatballs like we have here. And these are actually sitting on what are called shirataki noodles. The best known brand is called Miracle Noodles. And these are actually made out of a tuber from Japan and China called the konjac root. You don't have to remember that. Just remember Miracle Noodles. And these actually, the more you eat, the more weight you lose.
Like the sound of that?
And you can use them just like you would in any spaghetti recipe. And so you can have spaghetti and meatballs, and if you want to make some sauces that I talk about in the book, knock yourself up. Now, why do you want these guys? It turns out one of the blue zones, which is in south of Naples called Acciaroli, has more people over the age of 100 than any place in the world. 30% of the denizens in this town are over 100.
Wow.
And they have a very interesting diet. They eat huge amounts of rosemary, you know, that spice herb. They eat huge amounts of little anchovies and huge amounts of olive oil, and they eat lentils. What's interesting about them is they eat no pasta and no bread, and yet they're the longest living Italians. And so one of their secrets is lentils have polyamines. So again, we look at super old people and go, that must be a part of it. So if I can get polyamines in people and have it taste good, I've done my job.
Wonderful. And so now on to dessert. And I love we can have chocolate.
Oh,
everyone's favorite food.
I tell you, chocolate, actually super extra dark chocolate, preferably 85% or above. If you're trying to get used to it, 72% will work. But extra dark chocolate actually has been proven to build brain cells as you get older. It actually stimulates brain cells to grow. Can you imagine, you know, having a wonderful treat and stimulating your brain cells? But again, you know, having lived in the South for much of my life, rice pudding. Who doesn't like rice pudding?
You'd have to be crazy not to.
Exactly. But rice pudding is a killer. It's basically sugar and rice, right?
Yes.
Delicious sugar and rice. But so this is chocolate rice pudding, but the rice is actually cauliflower rice. So here you can have your dessert and eat it too, get the benefit of dark chocolate, get all the benefits of cruciferous vegetables like cauliflower, and no one will actually know that this dessert is good for them rather than going to kill them. And that's the whole idea. I want people to, you know, have food they love,
Yes.
but that will love them back.
Indeed. This is fantastic. Well, coming up next, Dr. Gundry will explain why fasting is a secret weapon when it comes to staying super healthy well into old age. And he'll share his fasting hack. We'll be right back. But this is one of the best things I've ever eaten.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, you know, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Welcome back to our discussion with Dr. Stephen Gundry, author of The Longevity Paradox, How to Die Young at a Ripe Old Age. And now you say science is overwhelming that fasting, of all things, is really good for us.
Yeah, you know, fasting has such a great tradition. You know, all great religions have fasting as part of the experience. And we used to think it was penance of, you know, paying back or suffering. In fact, it was because fasting improved people's health. And all the modern research has proven that those ancient traditions had reasons to improve health. What fasting does is actually makes the stem cells that recreate new cells that we all have in us activate and actually repopulate the wall of our gut, actually can grow brain cells, and it can actually grow heart cells. So fasting is really good. What's bad about fasting is people think of fasting as deprivation. Oh, geez, you know, I got to eat. Everybody's got to eat. And so much of our culture has been told, oh, you got to eat every 3 hours. You got to have a snack between meals. You have to have a snack before bedtime. And all of the evidence is truly that that's really bad for us. And it's part of the reason we're aging rapidly. So, for instance, breakfast is break fast, and it's the fast after night. And there's no law that says breakfast is when we should be breaking our fast. In fact, I just came back from France, and the French have actually no word for breakfast. Déjeuner is their first meal, and it's lunch. They invented petit déjeuner when all the tourists showed up and said...
That's their version of breakfast.
Yeah, so the longer we can go between meals, actually the better our health. Recently, Dale Bredesen was on the 700 Club, and he's a good friend of mine. And Dale would tell you, as I would, that we should really go about 14 to 16 hours between 2 meals.
So ideally, every single day, people should go ideally 14 hours or longer without eating. So that's between the last time they eat at night, 6 p.m., for example, all the way until mid-morning the next day. Now, you actually have something in your book, which I found fasting, which is called the fasting mimicking diet, which means you can actually eat some food and your body thinks you're fasting. Talk about that.
Yeah, so, you know, we talked about the blue zones have very little animal protein, and that's the thing that makes them live a very long time. And it breaks my heart because I actually grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, you know, the beef capital of the world. But what's been shown is that if we, Dr. Walter Longo from USC, who's become a friend of mine, has shown that if you go 5 days in a row eating a low-calorie vegan diet of about 800 to 900 calories a day, once a month, so Monday through Friday, eat a low-calorie vegan diet, you will act as if you had gone on a 30% reduction of calories over the entire month. You will stimulate your stem cells. You will repair your immune system. And all it costs you is 5 days a month. So in the book, we have a fasting mimicking diet. And one of the best ways to achieve that is the use of leeks. Now, in Europe, leeks are incredibly popular, but in the United States, we look at these and say, well, it looks like a giant onion, and it is part of the onion family, and we actually usually use only the white parts. But leeks make a compound called polyamines, which we've mentioned before, that really promotes health. But the great thing about it is you can eat huge amounts of leek soup because there's very few calories. So you can fill up and not feel deprived, and that's the key. You can actually mimic a fast without depriving yourself. And that's the whole idea. We don't want to deprive ourselves.
And this is actually quite delicious. I had some, and this is one of the main ingredients that you recommend for people when they go on the fasting mimicking diet, 5 days a month.
In a row.
In a row.
And so it's really easy to do in 1 week. And then you get the weekend and you can start eating again.
Well, you know, you say that one of the things that's so great about fasting is it sort of stresses our system, and in so doing gets rid of the bad cells. And you say also being in a cold environment does the same thing.
Yeah, believe it or not, cold and heat, extreme heat and extreme cold are amazing stressors. They actually turn on these compounds called heat shock proteins. And being under stress is actually what's called hormesis. And when we're stressed a little bit, that which doesn't kill us makes us stronger.
Love it. All right. Well, when we come back, Dr. Gundry's been telling us what we need to do to live long, healthy lives. And coming up, he'll tell us the biggest mistakes we make right after this.
Daddy?
Yeah, buddy?
How many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times bestselling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts in this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain, get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
We're back with Dr. Stephen Gundry, author of The Longevity Paradox, How to Die Young at a Ripe Old Age. And you talk in here about washing your brain. What does that mean?
Well, we now know that the brain actually has to go through a wash cycle. And during that wash cycle, which happens really early in sleep, called deep sleep, we actually clean all the toxins like amyloid and tau proteins out of our brain. We have to have a lot of blood flow into our brain to do that, kind of like a wash cycle. And if you eat a meal too close to the time of bed, all the blood rushes down to your stomach for digestion and doesn't go up to your brain to clean your brain. It's kind of like when you and I were growing up, Mom told us we couldn't go swimming for an hour after we ate because we'd get cramps and die. Well, that wives' tale was a little bit of truth. And what we now know is if you eat too close to the time you go to bed, you don't wash your brain. And all those toxins accumulate. And so eating close to bedtime is a really dumb idea. So we want to go 3 to 4 hours before bed, and we don't want a late night snack. Then you'll wash your brain. So once a week, I like people to don't eat dinner after 6 o'clock or skip dinner altogether, and then you'll increase your fasting.
Well, speaking of food, you're very big on organics because of enemy number one, glyphosate, which a lot of people have never even heard of.
Yeah, most people have heard of Roundup, which is glyphosate. And Roundup, unfortunately, used to be used only on genetically modified foods, GMOs. As a way of killing weeds, then you could still have the crops. Unfortunately, now glyphosate, Roundup, is applied to most of our conventional crops, like wheat, like corn, like soybeans, like canola, for harvesting purposes, because dead plants are actually easier to harvest. Glyphosate isn't washed off. It's fed to animals, and it ends up in their meats, and it ends up in all of our breads, our cereals, our crackers. In fact, a new study showed in 35 oat products that we eat, including many children's breakfast cereals, glyphosate is in there. Now, why is that a problem? Glyphosate was patented by Monsanto as an antibiotic. It kills bacteria. And one of the things I stress in this book is a healthy microbiome, healthy bugs in our gut, is the key to longevity. And killing them off every day with our conventionally raised products is crazy. So organic foods, yes, it's more expensive, but in the long run, you won't be expending money for hip replacements, heart surgery, cancer treatments. In fact, there's now been 3 settlements against Bayer Monsanto for glyphosate Roundup causing cancer.
And so we really have to take care of that gut. You really drive that lesson home in this book.
Take care of your gut buddies, and they'll take care of you.
The good bacteria, and try to stay away from the antibiotics unless you really need them.
Yeah, we've just been overdosed in antibiotics, both in the animals that are fed antibiotics, and we still give antibiotics willy-nilly for any cough, any cold, any ear infection, and we don't need them because most of these infections are caused by viruses, not bacteria.
All right, Dr. Gundry, we will be right back, and he will answer viewer mail, so stay tuned. Yeah, do you ever...
Cause
on the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
On the home front, Tuesday morning at 10:30.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government.
My focus has been trying to really make sure we have the future leaders we need for the bench and the bar and for society generally.
You'll learn from highly credentialed leaders who are current and former judges, distinguished scholars, and ACLJ counsel.
I'm so glad I chose Regent. The relationships here have been amazing. The faculty have been amazing. Not everybody's called to the same thing when they leave law school, but they're called by a God who has a purpose for their lives, and He is going to use that education to make a difference in the world.
Regent will prepare you to be a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer. To start your rewarding law career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July. Apply today.
We're back with Dr. Stephen Gundry, author of the book, The Longevity Paradox, How to Die Young at a Ripe Old Age. And he's here to answer your question. The first one is from Tracy. What is your opinion of the keto diet, so popular these days?
Well, you know, chapter 10 in my book, The Plant Paradox, is my keto version. The mistake I see in most keto dieters is, number one, they never get into ketosis because most of them are eating far too much animal protein. And one of the mistakes Atkins made, he didn't realize that protein will turn into sugar. It's called gluconeogenesis. The other mistake of a keto diet is you do want to eat a lot of fat, but it's not animal fat. That was proven over and over again that you really don't want your fat from animals. So heavy cream and things like that you want to avoid. What you do want is fats from olive oil and avocados, plant fats. These actually are life-saving. 3 of the blue zones eat over a liter of olive oil per week. That's 10 to 12 tablespoons a day.
Wow. So olive oil, avocados, nuts also high in fat that also are plant-based.
Particularly macadamia nuts. In fact, one of my favorite sayings is the only purpose of food is to get olive oil in your mouth.
Love it. Okay, Scott asks, how can I eat healthy on a budget?
That's a very common question. I actually take care of a lot of Medi-Cal and Medicaid patients who, quite frankly, don't have a lot of money. And what we found with these people is they actually save money because they stop buying processed foods. And processed foods, there's a lot of profit margin in processed foods. The other thing they find is their diabetes goes away, their high blood pressure goes away, they throw their heart medications away. And so they save money on medications. And so in the long run, they actually save money.
Well, this is such an encouraging message. Our thanks again to Dr. Stephen Gundry. The book is The Longevity Paradox, How to Die Young at a Ripe Old Age. Thank you so much for being with us again.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching us. God bless you, and we'll see you again next time.